Let's get it. Welcome to the Dear Son Show. We have meaningful conversations about life through the lens of fatherhood. It's for fathers, those with fathers, and the fatherless. Nobody's left out. These are the conversations I want my sons to access as they grow through life, so no topics are off limits. I'm your only host today, but I got an amazing guest, Myer, Krah. Welcome to the Dear Son Show. How are you, my brother?
Bad, bro, man. It's sunny out here in Georgia. I'm enjoying my time, man. Just happy to be here, bro.
Indeed, y'all had that snow not too long ago.
Man, like I'm thinking I was gonna get away from the snow, and I actually got more snow than Norfolk, bro. Like snowing 2 weeks ago, and it's like 78 degrees yesterday. I pulled the basketball goal out. It's crazy.
We were in shorts this week. It's things supposed to be like 75 today, so we got redeemed because we had a few cold weeks out here in Texas as well, man. But how you doing, bro?
Living the dream, man. I got already 4 kids, and I got one more on the way in less than 30 days. So you already know how it get when you start getting closer to baby time. You got this long list of things that you got to do. And then you also got the list of mom. So mom puts her stuff on top of there. So now I'm just like, I'm all over the place. And baby can come in at any point in time. So I'm wondering what part of the list I'll be on when the baby get here.
Right. Yeah, I would much rather have a list than have the baby in me. So there's that.
Yes, absolutely.
There's always that. How old are your kids now?
So I got oldest is 7. Then I got a 4-year-old, set of twin boys that are 2. So everybody's 2. All right. Yeah.
Hey, you sure this is not twins? This
They
coming?
got not twins, man.
Okay.
You know how they always ask, they say like, oh, you must have twins in the family. And no, we didn't see twins nowhere in our family. Like, nobody knows where they came from. And I was upset.
Right.
I was upset because I was like, somebody got to tell me something. But no, no twins in the family. And we're not having a set of twins. That would change things drastically.
Gotcha. So you mentioned Norfolk. But that's not home, is it? Originally?
Well, Durham, North Carolina, the Bull City, but military.
Okay.
That was my first duty station after coming out of the Navy.
Okay. What was Durham like growing up?
It's a lot changed now, man. Growing up, I didn't recognize that I was in like black greatness, to be honest. Like that was one of the Black Wall Streets people talk about. Martin Luther King's been there multiple times, and even my high school is known as like one of the oldest historically black high schools, like all of the East Coast. But me, I had no clue about any of that. All I wanted to do was play football, enjoy life, and just do whatever. It wasn't until I left that I started appreciating Durham a whole lot. And then I started to want to go back and like speak and talk and do things that had anything to do with politics or speak to the kids and try to get out. But the biggest thing I did when I did leave was recognize that I had a lot of friends who weren't leaving and a lot of friends who couldn't leave, which makes a very big difference. And so my biggest thing was I'm going to try to do as best as I can while I'm out here so I can come back and show them that, hey, you can figure your own way out and to try to be more like a representation to the youth. Since then, if you go into like downtown Durham, the streets that I remember being like crackhead central or where you can go buy something for the low, now you see, white women walking down the street with, little foo-foo dogs and stuff like that, Pomeranians, and they riding bikes with the kids and stuff. It's very different than where I grew up in. Not everything has changed. You can still find those pits in those areas, but gentrification is very real. I'm starting to see it in my own.
Yeah, that is a big deal. I'm from Hampton Roads area, and it's changed a lot, but I don't know that gentrification is actually the word for Hampton and Newport News. Maybe on the Norfolk side in Virginia Beach, but Virginia Beach has always been kind of upscale. But it saddens me sometimes to go home to see it. It just feels like it's stuck. I mean, I love my people, love my family, and I go visit. I just can't see, barring anything significant happening in my life, going back to live. So once I was out, I was kind of out. Who was in the home growing up, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah. So it was both my mom and my dad. Most people thought, of course, because they were together for so long, I'm the oldest of 4. There's me, I got a brother under me, a sister, and then I got a baby brother. They thought because they were together so long, I think I thought it too, that they were married. But the entire time they were not, which to me, I don't know if that really makes a huge difference or if it made a huge difference for me then. I think about it more now, but they were together the entire time that I was in the home as well as my siblings. They're now separated, but they met long time ago. My dad played soccer in Liberia, West Africa, played professionally, and got called to come play here in DC. Before you know it, he started getting hurt, and I think he hurt his back or something like that. Moved to North Carolina and met my mom, and then that's all she wrote.
Wow. So West Africa I have an affinity for because when I was in corporate, I was head of a lot of Department of State contracts, and the contract that I was with was the largest in Africa, specifically Sub-Saharan and West Africa. So I always had an affinity for it. Have you been to Liberia?
No, I have not.
How
I
much do you
have
know
not.
about your dad's past or his roots?
I know a lot more about his roots than I know about his past. And I think that's saying something significant because my dad, if you know about West Africa, especially growing up in a West African household, fathers don't really talk a lot, man. Like they're workaholics for the most part. They want to do the protect and the provide part, but normally aren't emotionally available. So when it came to understanding his past, I had to kind of read things through the grapevine. But something specific about Liberia, they went through like a 21-year civil war. So a lot of the family members that I thought I would get a chance to meet, getting older, died in Civil War, and I would even hear different ways that they were murdered or passed away during that time through my cousins or through the grapevine, or it would just be really kind of awkward and morbid during that time. Like I was the oldest and didn't really know what was going on, but each morning I remember, seeing my dad sit down, eat breakfast. He'll read a newspaper or get a phone call, and he would just sit at the counter and just cry for a second, and then he would just go to work. And I still have these memories of it now, and I can't even piece together which moments were connected to what events, but I still remember these. And I think the only moment I remember my dad either crying or having that type of feeling that I was able to connect to an event was when it was all over. When the Civil War was over and they said like everything's not really gonna turn back to normal, but it was gonna be less death, I guess you could say that. And he was gonna get a chance to bring over a lot of our family members to come live with us. And I don't think he brought over as many as he wanted to, but those children, his sisters, and his brother that he did get a chance to bring over was a big deal for him. And I remember seeing him cry before he went to the airport to go pick them up.
Wow. You have any desire to go?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, man. Only reason why I have is because I keep having babies, man. I want to go bad. And my wife, of course, she wants to visit. And I'm always probably once a month, man. I'm looking for a different opportunity to learn more. I've
Yeah.
read books. My dad, he loves politics. He's run for House Representative down there as well. And actually, a guy that he played soccer with growing up and professionally in Liberia is actually the president now, George Weah. So he's still locked in, and I'm trying to make sure that I keep myself locked in as well. So when it's time for me to go there, nobody's looking at me like, why didn't you teach? Why don't you understand any of this? Like, why didn't your dad teach you about our culture and our history and stuff? So I'm preparing myself, and then when the kids are all old enough to get babysat at one time, and mommy and daddy can get away, man, I'm gonna definitely go down there and do what I got to do, and it's gonna be probably a recurring a thing that I'm going down there year after year and helping my dad, get the land together because he still owns land and he's got houses and a lot of different programs that he wants to continue. So,
Yeah. Might be worth looking into citizenship, quite honestly, the way
yes.
things are going here. I want to go back to something you mentioned about your parents. And again, if I'm prying, just stop me. It's fine. It's kind of what I do. But you said they were together in your mind only to find out that they weren't like legally married. How old were you when you found out?
Hmm. I probably was like 15 years old, like maybe
Wow.
15. I was pretty old. And I knew my mom had a different last name. But things didn't really come out until I heard her speaking to one of my like good friends. She was like bringing us home from a track meet one day, and they were prying. Like he was one of those guys who just didn't mind asking questions. He always was curious about things, and he asked my mom like, "Why do you have a different last name?" And she said, "Well, I was married before," and I'm like. Bro, I'm sitting in the passenger seat, like I've never even heard this. So she's like, I was married before, and she starts to unfold this story that was brand new to me, and it put both my mom and my dad not in a bad light, but it gave me an idea that there was a perspective of their life that I didn't know. and it was okay, but I had to remember that they lived life before me. So now I
Right.
started to have my own questions, and I started to ask my mom, and I started to listen and pay attention more on the way that they would talk to other, adults and that their friends and how they reacted and just the relationship that they had with each other. And I did ask myself the question like, why not get married? But that was never going to be something that I was going to ask my mom or my dad.
How did that influence or inform your decision when you started pursuing your wife and were thinking about marriage and family? How did it impact that?
Well, once I started to get older, I started to see that my mom and dad weren't gonna work out. Like the arguing over the small things, no matter what it was, I started to realize that at some point they were gonna separate. And I felt the reason they were gonna separate was because they didn't have marriage to be the outside thing to commit to that was gonna hold them together. So my first thing was, how do I not become that? Now, I hate to really think that I had to use my parents as a motivation to do something better or to do something great, but that's essentially what happened. And I also didn't want to ask my parents because I didn't want to ask them about marriage or like, how do I do this? How do I become the best husband? So, man, I took it to YouTube University, man. Like, I was literally right after football season. I can remember like it was yesterday. I would sit at my computer for hours after I got out of school, and I would just type in marriage counseling, marriage therapy, marriage sermons. And I can literally go back and watch the TD Jakes versions of this over and over again. It was a lot of black preachers that I was watching on there, but it was hours and hours of footage and recording, and I was taking notes. I almost had to do it as if it was like some type of course or something, because that's what I was used to. And I would think that naturally I would be able to, use someone else's experience or maybe even use my parents' experience to be able to learn that. But I took it to YouTube University, and that's how I decided that was the type of husband I was going to be.
Wow. So you were it didn't influence whether or not you wanted to be married. You just had to get the information a different way to be successful. How far did football take you?
I played in college, so I played at the Naval Academy from 12 to 16. I enjoyed it. I was never one of those guys that like I want to play in the NFL or I need to play professionally. I enjoyed being on a team more than I enjoyed like exactly what I was doing. And don't get me wrong, like I love football and I love putting my body and stuff out there, but I care more for the guys that I was playing with.
What did the separation feel like? I mean, you kind of alluded to you were of a mindset that this wasn't a forever thing, but I have some athlete friends. I was athletic, but wasn't necessarily playing or making it to any kind of collegiate level. But the separation from the game is always a topic of discussion. And some, no matter how far in advance they saw the writing on the wall, it just seemed to be a challenge. Did you face any challenges when you separated, even though, like you said, you were of the mindset that this was going to go so far?
Yeah, absolutely, man. I didn't think it was going to be as bad as it was. I have a good friend who owns a nonprofit. It's called Purpose Over Position, and that's all they do is work with athletes and their transition out of the sport. For me, knowing I didn't care to go professionally or not, I didn't think that I would have a transition period. But when you talk about every single day of your life, that is what you do from 5:30 in the morning until you pretty much go to sleep at night, watching film, how people identify you. I mean, I remember even having teachers when they're trying to explain something to me in physics, they would talk to me as if I was like I only could live and breathe football. So they would explain it in football terms. It kind of pissed me off most times, if I'm being honest. But that's how they would identify me. So when football was gone, I went through probably like it's like a 2 to 3 month transition period in my mind of like, who am I for real? What am I supposed to be doing? Uh, and one of the things that I think that I walked away from or wanted to walk away from was not feeling like I had control. Um, Playing football, somebody's telling you to do something all the time, telling you where to go, telling you where you need to be, what you're supposed to be eating. Everything that I was doing had to do with them. But now I didn't have this overarching big brother on top of me telling me what I needed to do. I felt myself being lost. I was like, I don't even know what I like. And here I am. I'm an English major, but I don't even know if I enjoy reading books. Like I don't know if I enjoy writing. So I took it to my Bible and I started to read a little bit more. And before you know it, I started writing. I started writing poems. I started speaking a little bit differently, just because it wasn't about like me having to sound like some jock who was big, strong, this or that. I started getting a little bit more in tune with who I was, and it was always there. I feel like it was kind of always on the brink, and people understood what it was to have my personality. But I started to really dig into what I cared for most once I started to transition.
What did you find? And I'll kind of preface it because my big transition happened much later in life. It was coming out of corporate, against not against my will, because I was actually praying for it. I wanted to be in the entrepreneur space, and I wanted to kind of do things on my own outside of the corporation. And God was like, "Here,
Mm,
now what?" Right? So I was fortunate enough to be successful in corporate. Made it. I was getting promoted, and I was able to exit with dignity and with the cushion. But the cushion didn't tell me who I was,
mm.
and I realized that was my identity for 20 years or so. Even before I got married, oftentimes in conversation, the one thing I had, because I wasn't an athlete, was I was doing well in corporate. Like, so that was my thing, right? That I was a professional in that regard. So when that got taken away, it exposed what I wasn't being in my house to my wife, to my children. This was around age 43 for me. I'm 45 now, so I've been out two 2 years and some change, and I've learned a lot over these 2 years. But when you had to dig to figure out outside of football, outside of the jock expectation, like what did you find?
I think I found what I was good at, but I like that you broke that up because I was still having trouble with like valuing myself, right? Like I felt like everything that I got was given to me by either football through skills or something like that. But then now, because I was at the Naval Academy, I had to commit 5 years to the Navy. So now I'm rolling right back into something where I'm kind of being controlled, but I got more free will. But everything was still given to me, and the skills that I had to be used for them. It wasn't until my second transition out of the military where I had to really step out and figure out who I was and kind of actually use the value that I have for myself and for my family. I was using leadership at work, but I realized that I wasn't using leadership in my own home. Like I had a vision for what I wanted to do at work, but my wife couldn't see my vision at home. And I'm trying to figure out, why am I having so much turmoil? And my wife, I feel like, is not listening to me. I'm like, man, she's not being submissive, or she's not letting me lead the way that I think that I should be leading. But when in all actuality, I wasn't using a lot of the skills that God gave me to make my home grow. So, and think about it now too. Like when I got out of the military, this was only in July of last year. So I had been in the Navy for like almost 8 years now, still not having these catharsis about like, I'm not really leading my home right. I got two kids at this point in time, right? The twins are coming, but I got two kids at this time. And I'm like, man, I'm considering myself to be a man, right? And I'm considering myself to be the father and the husband of my home. And I'm leading them, and they are following, but I'm like, where are we going? Have I really explained to them where we're going? Have I really explained to them how I believe we're gonna get there? So my wife she's done her best, like stick by my side, and I love her so much for even thinking that she would follow somebody as crazy as me. And to me, I'm crazy. To me, it's like she doesn't know, of course, everything that's going on in my head that I'm battling constantly, but she's willing to say, like, babe, even if you don't have the answer, I know that you will find it if you continue to follow God. So as long as you with him, I'm with you, and we're gonna figure it out. And I'll say that we've been able to figure it out a lot more. So that second transition showed me like, hey, you're struggling with with security, like your own self security and self identity. Find that. So now I'm like, okay, I'm good at talking to people. Great. You care about people first. That's cool. You're really good at operating and learning how things work so that you can organize. Okay, how do I use these different things for myself? So now, like as I'm piecing these things together, I'm starting to get more comfortable in my own skin, and imposter syndrome isn't showing up as much as it used to, because that would show up a lot.
You mentioned God a few times. Would it your reliance on God develop? Was that something that you saw in your home as a child, or was there some event, some string of events that pushed you closer or had you focus more on that part of your life?
Yeah, like growing up, we went to church on Sundays, and then work started being the thing. When my mom and my dad started working on Sundays, church just kind of fell by the wayside. So I knew that we were Christian. I knew that like these are the principles, and I understand it in that way. And I think a lot of people have the same story of leaving, going to college, and kind of going crazy and doing whatever you want to, and then kind of coming back to God. But I would say I was going crazy in high school. I was like having sex with any girl I could find. I wouldn't say I was drinking or smoking or anything like that, but I was searching for something. And I was searching for a long time. And when I got to college and football got taken away from me, it was like I was stripped naked. And I was like, okay, now I'm not using this football thing as my identity. These girls aren't making me happy, right? It's not being fulfilled. It's not satisfying. So when that got taken away from me, and I went back to that book and I said, there's got to be something in here for me. That's when that walk, I think, really started. And I got baptized. And even as I continue to try to increase and make my relationship with him greater, it wasn't until, and I don't even know if I could put a finger on it, but I would say I started to ask myself the question, yes, you have a relationship with God, but do you fear God for real? And when I started to ask myself that, that's when change started to come. Because it's like, okay, yeah, great. I have a relationship with God. I know what He sounds like, but I'm still doing this. I'm still masturbating, or I'm still lying for no reason. But if I fear God for real, am I going to actually try to make that 180 that I promised Him that I would do almost 10 years ago? So that's at least how I say my relationship with Him, and how He's influenced my life has come to right now.
And that's a beautiful um a beautiful turn in your life. I would say the beautiful it's not nowhere near the end, but one thing in my struggle with women and sex that I figured out, right? And I grew up in a very religious house. Like it was, I said it before, my dad was, if it didn't point to God, it, I didn't feel like I could actually talk to my dad about it. So one thing about it was our relationship was strained because I had this perception of not necessarily him being perfect, but him not tolerating anything secular or worldly to a large degree. And the sex conversation was really, don't do it because God said so. Got it. I'm the kid that had to touch the stove, so you kind of know how that went. But what I realized later in life and when I got married is that it wasn't so much about sex being bad and us being unfairly limited from variety, but each experience informs the next. So the more experiences you have, the more, of course, you know about it, but the more you have an expectation of a certain feeling, a certain conclusion to it, like how it flows. And then when you get married, even if you cut all of that activity off, you've built up this expectation that you're now trying to find in your forever mate. That's typically not how it works. You're looking for all of these things because you've spread yourself around so much that now, even if monogamy is a focus, your body doesn't forget. So it starts to inform the experience that you have. And maybe others have had different experiences, but I know for me, I like get it, right? And one thing that was amiss from my parents' generation to mine that I won't miss my children is having a conversation about why for certain things. And I know your children are young, but I'm wondering if, and I just pulled a thread on sex because you mentioned it, but if any of your experiences have framed out in your mind that you're going to be very intentional about how you speak to your children about a thing, address things, being relatable. Like how was your experience? And again, it's not just about sex, but what things do you realize now maybe were misses that you have an opportunity specifically because your kids are young? My kids are 21, 19, 17, 11, and 10. So, the first three, they got a version of me. The last two, they're getting a version of me. And my granddaughter's probably getting the best. But what are your thoughts on like the aha moments of what was missed and, what deserves or requires a lot more of your focus to ensure that, those things don't prevail or repeat?
I would have to probably go back to maybe the reason that at least I found that kind of got me into having multiple sexual encounters or partners or even made it exciting for me. Um, I still remember not a lot of emotional availability in the home. Um, and then I don't even think it was really just for me. Um, the most emotional availability that there was probably between our siblings. Like we were the only one that would hug and cry and fight. But I only remember my parents kissing in front of me once. And that was to take a picture because they were starting a new business and they were going to put it on the website. So when it came to physical touch, any type of physical action or emotional connecting to a physical action, it was different. It was I don't want to call it taboo or weird because you could see it everywhere. I could see it on TV, and I had access to it. It's just I wasn't informed about it at all. So when I first started in middle school, start kissing and doing things of that nature, it felt good, as it should to most people, as it not likely will to most people. But I didn't have a framework other than God said don't do it. But I also didn't have a relationship because we talked about fearing God. At that point, I didn't even really have my own relationship. So I'm thinking, why not? That was the first part, right? It felt good. I need to have this. I need to continue to have this because also not getting it at home. And I would see an uptick, right? And I'll say in high school, I would see an uptick when things weren't going well at home or parents were fighting or anything like that. I would search even more for a woman to kind of fulfill or satisfy whatever that hole felt like. Um, and then the second part of that was not being able to talk about it, like at all. I was in the household where it was like, you're not even gonna have no girlfriend. Like, I don't need you talking to me. You don't need to do nothing but your books and schoolwork. And I understood that being like the rule, but there was never a why that came with it. And I never felt even comfortable asking the why. I felt like I was gonna get grounded or put on punishment. It was just like always such a big deal whenever it had to do with a girl. Like I couldn't go to prom. I wasn't allowed to go to my 8th grade formal because it had to do with girls. So that really only made me a rebel, to be honest, because you didn't give me a why. So as I'm raising my boys now, I'm thinking about how can I implement those two so that it's not such a taboo in our household. I might not always be the person that they come to or feel the most comfortable with bringing that stuff to, but I want there to be an opportunity and there to be like for me to be an option. You know what I'm saying? So they will see me kiss mom in front of them. They will see us hold and hug. And the same thing even with my male friends, like, what's up, dog? Give them a dap them up, hug, do things like that. Physical touch won't be weird. And as you're seeing stuff come on TV, because they're gonna get at the age where people are kissing on TV and doing things like that, I don't have a problem with coming up with the language to have these conversations. A lot of us didn't have the birds and the bees, but I want to have those conversations with them. And I still try my best to try to frame it in a way that comes from the Bible, but not give it to them way where it doesn't make sense in the world. I felt like I kept getting biblical references in scripture that wouldn't translate that wouldn't translate to my life. And it was getting hard. And now I'm looking for those myself. How do I translate what this Bible says to what's going on in real life? And whatever I get out of that, that's the dictionary I plan on giving to my kids.
Yeah, it is important, man. I sounds like we're from, or at least our parents may be from similar generations, and that I said so is a full explanation. And to a large degree it was. And the times of then, by the standards of then, but the our children have way more access to information that we can't control that our parents could control.
Yep. Yep.
It would have to be some kind of publication or something that was coming on TV that would inform you about certain things that they would want to block. And if they didn't want it in the house, it wouldn't be in the house. Now, I don't know what your policy is in your house with your children and electronics, but like mine, the more kids we had, the younger they got access to stuff. And I'm not necessarily proud of it. That's just how it was. And some of it was, it was electronic pacifier. Like they can be entertained by this. The challenge is they've only known that, so their aptitude, their ability to handle and navigate it is 10x what it would have been for us at that age, because we didn't have it. So if this is a norm, you become proficient at the norm, and then it becomes their lifestyle. So what are your thoughts on that part of it? We just did an episode, actually it's airing now, about teen privacy, and it started out, the conversation that we have on my platform, I never really planned. At the most, we may pull some information that helps, some statistics, but it's a conversation like this where you can have an unfiltered, unstructured to a degree conversation about real things that are happening, and we want to get our reaction in real time. So it's not a whole lot of planning. Just like before this call, we didn't plan too much. I just asked you what was off limits. But we started talking about privacy, and I realized how different I am from my parents in some regards, and how my expectations or the expectations that they set still hold true in my household today. What are your thoughts around, or what are you having to do now with the children at this age when it comes to privacy? Because that feeling that you were looking for in women, you had to go find it. Well, I don't know. You're much younger than me. You had to go find it in my day. You had to go find out what it was about. Now you can get on the phone and somebody can tell you and show you in very explicit detail.
Ah, okay. I
And
see what you're saying.
you know what I'm saying? So
Yeah. Okay.
they have, the information outpaces our ability to parent in a lot of instances. The younger they are, the more you can control it. But if you start trying to control it at 13, 14, you're late.
Yeah. Absolutely, especially when you talk about their influence and environment. Because we talk about what's going on the screens, but I still remember how I learned about sex, and I still remember how I learned about what a vagina might look like. It wasn't from a screen, and it wasn't from porn or anything. It was from my neighbor next door, who I'd already known about it. So it's like, when you go to school, what are the conversations that they're having? Your kids are still going to be able to learn something that you might not have been able to get out in front of. And although I say, like, we don't always plan, and we try to somewhat come up with a policy of what we want, I hate that I have to be reactionary still. My child still might hear something and come to me with a question, and I'm like, so I've decided to prepare myself more, to be able to speak to things, right? Like, what are the conversations gonna sound like when I do have it with them? And like, the oldest is 7 years old right now, so we've only had conversations about curse words, your body, what girls have and what boys have, how that's different. So we're having some of those conversations, and he's homeschooled now. This is his first year, but I still have to understand and remember what other kids are also being exposed to, because when he's out in the world and he's hearing that, I don't want him to be shocked. I don't want him to be freaking out, because he's going to get put in the same position, right? Now he's hearing something else, and he's going out there to look for the answer when I want him to know that the answer is right here. So it's all about being available for me. He knows that I'm available to talk about it. I'm not gonna be like, let's talk to your mom, or I'll tell you when you're older. That is the one phrase I don't want to have to say. I'll explain it as plainly as I can, and maybe I'll give him more details as he gets older. But if he's got the question, bro, I'm supposed to be the well. Like, he got to come to me. And I still want to continue to be that. But I'll say I've been a whole lot more reactionary to things that they've seen and have had to be. They get to watch, kids stuff. I've started to throw more things on that I used to grow up watching, things that are a little less stimulating. Hey Arnold, Berenstain Bears, and things of that nature. But if you will ever watch YouTube, they still got the ads. So when the ads pop up, that commercial could be somewhere out of left field. It could be a scary movie. It could be anything. So it's really still hard. So we try to be present when they're having their screens and stuff. But man, we're not helicopter parents either.
What's one thing right now in your life that scares you about being a father, if anything?
That's a good one, bro. Cause I think I'm scared about. I think I get scared about quite a few things. But I would say it like this. And tell me if this is a roundabout answer. When we talk about healing from our own traumas, we talk about healing from what our parents done to us in the past or the environment they created. I consider myself a fatherhood advocate, and I'm trying to be the best father I can be in my home to my son, and I'm trying not to get choked up about it, but I'm trying to be the best, right? But I know that I'm not perfect, so I'm gonna mess some stuff up. Ultimately, when I mess up, it's gonna mess him up. I might not know what that is. So I'm trying to prepare myself for what it looks like when it does do that and how it affects him, and only hope that I'm open enough for him to bring it to me and say, Dad, I just want you to validate my feelings. You know what I mean? So I'm afraid, this is the way I'll answer the question. I'm afraid of things that I'm gonna miss because I know I'm gonna miss something, but I'm still happy about the opportunities that I plan on taking and the opportunities I'm creating to build the man that I want him to be. I hope that answers the question.
Absolutely, man. That's I think that's valid, and I'm not in any sense trying to validate your feelings, but maybe I should say that resonates with me. Especially having children with the gap that we do. Like, I literally have almost 3 adults in my home. My 17-year-old will be 18 in the summer, so I'll technically have 3 adults. And I'm always thinking, like, come to tears at times about, man, have I actually prepared them for life? And a lot of it is what I thought was protecting them were opportunities to prepare them where I didn't act. And now they're in a position where life is absolutely going to give them the test, but I didn't give them a study guide in some instances. So it causes me to be a lot more open about things that I've done. And I've said this on the platform that some people come to the platform, they're like, man, you always talking about yourself where you fumbled. Right. There's plenty of other places, like social media is a highlight reel. Go there to find perfect dads or the perfect representation.
Yeah.
I'm trying to tell you why I bumped my head, so maybe you don't have to. And part of it, even this whole podcast was an accountability thing with my son, because when I got 13, 14, I started rejecting is a very harsh word. And it's not like I could actually do that in my father's house without getting anyway. But I didn't want his information. I didn't want his experience. I didn't like the rules of the religion. Like, all of it I felt was against me. And I started to rebel quietly because being defiant won't gonna keep me alive in the house. But I realized that I had begun to parent my son like that. like the way I wanted to be parented, which was to kind of be hands off. And he was looking for me to be more hands on. And it kind of broke me because it made me realize that, back to the point about not showing up in the house like I need to, I was a rock star at work, and I knew I wasn't at home, which made me work harder at work,
Mm.
if that makes sense. The thing that I do well somehow will balance, which I don't believe in balance in life at all now, will somehow make up for where I was struggling out and failing. So this has been a blessing to me because it keeps me accountable. He's been on the platform to talk about that. This is how I feel. Our communication is kind of like this. I need to be like this. And he told me the other day, or in the last episode he was on, that I was more relatable, which was a sigh of relief because he's quiet. And I was a quiet kid, but I was quiet because, number one, I only had one sibling, my older sister. And by the time I got to high school, she was in college. And it wasn't like we had a relationship where I could kind of go to her with stuff because our choices in life were very different. I was the child that bucked at a bunch of stuff, and either she didn't or she just didn't get caught. The jury's still out on that. But it was like, man, what is he struggling with, knowing what I was struggling with and what I turned to?
Man, yeah.
And I didn't want that for him. And also I had two girls first. So I was very soft as a parent.
Mm.
Two girls first, and then when my son was born, I thought there was an opportunity to go hard on my child, which was foolish.
It didn't work out like that?
Well, I started off like that, like with the spanking and the hand of correction, but I realized that it was more so about it being my turn to wield that power than it was about a corrective action that was really going to actually fix something.
Mm.
So, my children can be talked to, and there's times where punishment has to fit the crime, but beating wrong out or beating right in, I just don't believe it.
I feel like it should be almost like my last resort. It's like, do I have any other tools that I could possibly use? Because that don't come with a lot of explanation. It don't come with a whole lot of why. It doesn't make the brain turn. I don't remember too many times I got a whooping and then went back to my room and really thought about what I did. But a conversation always did that for me. So I mean, I'm not here to try to knock anybody down or what they're doing and how they're disciplining or anything like that. But I'm with you on that one too. And I also like that you said you had girls first, and you thought you kind of started off soft, and then you thought you could be hard. Because what I kind of took from that was you may not have recognized that what you had learned about being soft with your girls, your son actually needed. So you actually develop skills that aren't given to a lot of our, especially our black boys, about softness and being there in that manner. But you had those skills. You just weren't, that's not your experience. That may not have been your experience, probably not what you saw growing up. So you probably didn't even think you could use that. And you ended up using it probably.
It hit home for me one day, man, and I'll start to wind with this one. Wind down, that is. I was mad about. I had this thing where I would be furious, which is a strong word, but actually is relevant in this case, applicable. That my son was making mistakes, or his behavior was reflecting something that I didn't like, but I hadn't actually told him. Right? It was things that I was assuming because at your age I was doing this. At 12 years old, my dad didn't have to tell me to cut the grass. It was cut when he got like that kind of thing. But I realized I didn't raise him like when I cut the grass. I didn't make him come outside, which was my fault. If I would, like, my dad was the kind of guy that if he's working on the car, be in the garage with him. Don't be upstairs on the, like, playing the game. If I'm outside in the yard, you be out in the yard with me. That kind of thing. So you can actually understand. And I missed that whole transfer of work ethic and lesson in the doing, and just allow him to kind of chill out. So I'm furious about it. And I forgot what the incident was, but something came to a head, and I actually explained to him why I was mad. He said, "Thank you. I never knew that."
Wow. Yeah. That'll do it.
Like, of course you didn't know that because I never actually told you. So sometimes, when parenting goes wrong, we like a lot of my frustrations was recognizing that I was dropping the ball, and it hurt. And I would, sometimes lash out or take my frustration out on him, which was not appropriate when I was just upset with me, really. So, man, as we start to bring this to a close, man, what's important to you that your children understand about you?
Daddy loves first. That's gonna be the one thing I'm always gonna try to teach them. That's gonna be the one thing that I want them to always know. When things go wrong, when things go well, that there's never a question that daddy doesn't love me, or daddy's not gonna lead with love. Even if I get angry, it's like he's angry because he loves us so much that this. And I have to remember that I can't just show the love, but I have to also explain why I'm doing certain things. Or like I have to say, daddy is angry because he loves you so much. I have to also say that because I don't want to get anything lost in translation. But and I'll kind of answer the question and put it all together like this. My mentor told me, he said, "Man, like I'm so happy you guys are having more kids," and I couldn't understand why he kept saying that. And he finally said, like, more good people need to have good kids and put them out into the world. And now I'm thinking about, okay, yeah, okay. So I'm not saying I'm the best person in the world, but I would consider myself a good person. And now I'm going to have kids who I'm going to raise good people. And then those good people are going to have more good kids. And now our world is being populated with more good people. So if I teach them how to lead with love and love first, that's all that I expect them to put out into the world. So if I want to change the world, that's going to be the way I do it. I got 5 kids coming, so that's what's going down.
Well, I salute you, man. I got 5, so if you hit 6, man, you won. I'm out the game.
Nah, brother, this ain't the race I'm trying to win.
Yeah, completely out the game, man. I definitely appreciate this conversation, man. I'm glad we were able to get it together. I know I recognize what this moment is for you, anticipating number 5. And I don't know about yours, but none of mine are the same. So there was no repeat what we did with number 1 with number 2, repeat with number 3 what we did number 2. Like, they're all different algorithms. So I know you'll do well. I know you welcome that challenge, and you welcome that opportunity with excitement. So I'm happy for you, man. I'm proud of you. I claim you from the 757 because that's really the reason why
I'll
we
take it.
connected. That's really the reason. I think with RJ, and
Yep,
I
yep.
still haven't connected with him on the show yet. I'm trying to figure that out. But 757 always has a special place in my heart, man. So much success to you and your wife. Hopefully this won't be our last conversation.
Never that.
No, keep pushing forward, man. What you said, when you go back and listen to it, I know you said it, so you know what you said. But when you go back and listen to it, I think you'll be proud of who you are, if that makes sense.
I appreciate that, man. That's very affirming because I ask myself that all the time. I appreciate that.
Yeah, a lot of us still don't know who we are, and that's okay to not know completely, but to be searching, to be in the pursuit of understanding you, I think is important. That's a forever journey. So, any closing words, man? Anything you want to shout out? I know you got a podcast too.
Yeah, man. I'll definitely tell the people how to find me, but first I want to say thank you. Like, we talk about having our fathers and having father figures, but it's also good to have peers who walk along and are willing to have these hard conversations and be vulnerable about it. When I first started the podcast, yours was the very first thing that came up. Like, multiple people was like, "Yo, he from here, man, and he talk about great stuff. Like, you got to follow his podcast." And I dove way in, man. Like, I was watching like almost every day, and not only did I enjoy watching the visuals and seeing how great everything looked and the lighting and everything, but the conversations always provoked something in my mind that I had not either thought of or hadn't answered for myself. So of course I wasn't trying to steal content or do anything, but it created a chance to have these conversations in my own home, and that's always what I want to do with my conversations on my podcast is start something that creates a conversation between you and your friends or you and your own home, because when you do that, you might bring up more questions. So, but yeah, if anybody's looking for me, man, they can find me at Here for the Dads podcast. On Instagram is Here the number 4 the Dads, and on YouTube it's Here for the Dads podcast. So reach out at any point in time if you guys got anything, man. And I hope at some point I'll get a chance to come down there in Texas and maybe we could do something in person, or I can get you on mine.
Yeah, how far are you from Atlanta? Are you in Atlanta?
35 minutes, yeah.
Okay. There's a chance I'll be there this summer, man. My brother-in-law's there, but there's a few interviews that we haven't been able to connect over the last couple of years with people in Atlanta. So I'm gonna move around, man, but I definitely let you know, man. Again, I this conversation has helped me, so I got what I needed. So I'm sure
Same, bro.
I'm sure other people will as well. I always shout out my wife, Love Keisha J. Her children's book, Chocolate Princess Volume 1 is out, suitable for young women of color, ages 5 to 15. Her website, Love Keisha J Studios, where she makes jewelry and clothes and a whole bunch of other stuff on top of having a job. So super dope. I married up for sure. My book, Dear Son, 20 Life Prompts to Facilitate Effective Parenting. It's an ebook. The link is below. So if that is of interest to you, please pursue. With that, we appreciate you guys. God bless you. Peace.